So, okay, let me repeat. Your final paper for RMS2 is an extension of your final paper from RMS1. Your RMS1 paper is till method section. Your RMS2 paper would revise till this point, then add additional sections, two main additional sections, results and discussion. Okay. In addition to, of course, tables or figures. The references pretty much be same unless you find some new ones. Now, one additional thing that will be a part of your RMS2 paper, the final paper, that you did not provide before is the abstract in RMS1. Now, let me tell you what is abstract. Now, you already have this information. If you have your 11 pointers of your own study, the most important points from that go here in the abstract section. So what are those things? Remember, we talked about writing a paragraph summary. Do you guys remember that? In fact, for your literature review, you wrote paragraph summaries of 10 articles. Remember that? Yeah. Okay. Now, that paragraph summary was the paragraph summary of other articles. In the abstract, you're basically writing a paragraph summary of your own study. So what goes in a paragraph summary? Well, let me show you one more time. State the goal. Let me take the example of caffeine. This study examined what is a goal. A goal is nothing but a research question turned into a sentence, right? If the research question is, does caffeine affect the attention of males and females differently? That's a question, right? If you turn that into a sentence, what would that be? Whether caffeine affects the attention of males and females differently. So this study examined whether caffeine affects the attention of males and females differently. You see that? It's a research question turned into a sentence. What is next? Then the task, right? Participants in this study were both males and females were randomly assigned either to a caffeinated or a decaffeinated condition. Participants consumed the assigned drink and took the attention test. So that's the task. So you got your goal, which is a research question. Then you got your task. What is the next one in the paragraph summary? IV, right? Caffeine condition served as the independent variable with caffeinated and decaffeinated as two between subject levels, right? What is the other IV? Participants' gender served as another independent variable, right? What next? IVs with levels, then DV, right? Participants' score. Participant scores on the attention test as the critical. I'm just adding critical. You don't need to write dependent measure or dependent variable, right? So you got IV, you got goal, task, IV, DV. What is next? Results, then conclusion, right? So what are the results? Let's assume you got the results. Then say, as predicted, participants given the caffeinated drink without numbers, right? Only the explanation. Participant given the caffeinated drink scored higher on attention test than those given the decaffeinated drink. But the more important result is related to the most important prediction, which is related to interaction, right? So more importantly, the effect of caffeine was more for females than males. Then conclusion results suggest that caffeine has different caffeine effects. It says that caffeine effects are different for males and female. So this is a paragraph summary of any study, right? So also your study. So this is the only additional part that you add to the proposal till methods. The only thing that is missing is this abstract, which has these parts in it. Okay. Then, of course, you'll refine it. There were some submissions that did not provide enough, enough paragraph summaries. So you lost their points right away. So you'll submit it again with fewer than required paragraph summaries, meaning articles, right? Then you'll definitely lose the points like you did last time. So this part is same. Then comes to your part, the important part that you'll add is the results and conclusion. But most importantly here in the method section, you will update this one because you have more information now. You know how many participants have participated, right? Now everything in this part is written in future tense last semester, right? You'll turn that into past tense, right? Not only that, but you'll provide more information, right? So 120 participants, students, graduate students from University of Southern Indiana participated in the study for course credit by using SONA and all that information. Now you have more information, right? Because you've submitted the IRB. All that information goes in here, materials, procedure. So it's more updated than it was last semester. Okay. Now look at this one. The results section. Now, if you look at this, just like the template for last semester, the template here also is very clear, paragraph to paragraph. Okay. The expectation is very clear. So what do you do in the results section? You write heading for the results, which is basically results, right? Then what do you do in the first paragraph? What do you do in the second paragraph? What do you do in the third paragraph? Is everything stated here for you. You just have to follow the template. And everything you're stating in the results section is related to what you have learned about reporting results in APA style by working on all these homeworks throughout the semester. Remember? First, what analysis was conducted on what? Then, was there a significant main effect? Then, what is the F value and F statistic? Then, followed by explanation sentence with means and standard deviation. Everything is same. And you'll do that. First paragraph, before you even talk about the results, right? You have to restate some study details. So you have to tell, like, what was manipulated IV? What was measured DV? Right? Then restate the design of your study. Then talk about if there are any participants' data that was thrown out and not included in the analysis. You provide that additional information. So then the paragraph. What do you do next? Is you take one result at a time. One result at a time. Meaning, remember, some of you have more than one DV. Then you can provide the main effect, interaction, everything related to one DV, then move on to everything related to the second DB. But if you're only one DB, then just you do it only once. Okay. And it may take more than one, right? So what do you do here? Well, you say what this analysis was conducted on this. This resulted in a main effect of IV1, right? Comma F statement. Then you describe the main effect with means and standard deviation, mean and standard deviation. Then you write about interactions. Are they significant? What did you do if they were significant? Then you provide all that information in one or two paragraphs. Then you refer to the table or figure that you've selected and you present it here. Are we clear on this? Now again, result section is mostly what you've been doing all along. Main effects, interactions, postdocs, figures or tables. That's what goes here in the result section. Then comes your discussion section. And what goes in the discussion? Well, there's several things that go in the discussion. And again, I kind of gave you a structure to it. The first thing that you do in the discussion, the paragraph one, is again, you may think like, what the heck? This is all a repetition. Now, keep in mind the reason why you repeat this information at several places is is a structure of a research paper. Even if you take a journal article and read it, this is how it is structured. Why? This structure will help the reader know where to find what. People don't read the entire paper; they directly go to the discussion. In that case, this first paragraph helps them understand stuff, right? So if you see repetition of information, that's because this research article is structured in a way so people can read and understand at any point they start. That's why there is a repetition. So let's look at the discussion. What goes in here? Well, reinstate everything you've done so far. What is it? Restate the purpose and goal of the study, which is basically a research question, right? Restate what hypothesis and predictions you made, which you did in the overview of the current study, right? Present the results for one or more, what do you say, most important results for one DB, right? Then state if these results were in line with your predictions and whether the hypothesis was supported or not. So basically, you're stating this is why we did this study. These are the results. These results did or did not support the hypothesis. That's what you're saying in the very first paragraph. Now, this is the important paragraph. Now, you may or may not find any interesting things. That's okay. Then you don't need to provide anything there. But here is the important part of your discussion. This is where the discussion synthesis part starts. First, you have to say, what do you infer about your study, about your research question? I'll read it. Explain what you infer from your findings about the goal of your study, right? Now, again, pay attention to this. Just based on your results, you've already made a conclusion here, right? Either it supported or did not support your hypothesis, right? Then you can elaborate on what your main goal is, what it means. That's about just your study and the conclusions of your own study. Now, what happens is you'll do the same thing by comparing your findings with the findings of other studies that you've stated in the introduction. That's what the discussion is. Again, I'm going to repeat now. Okay. This is basically your 6 pointers, if I'm not wrong, right? What you're doing next, if you forget about this interesting findings, right? What you're doing next is you are again talking about the 6 pointers, but not as 6 pointers. You're talking about what your study findings mean in terms of an answer to your research question by comparing your findings with other study findings, the studies that you have reported in your literature review. Does it make sense? So that's why it says explain what you infer from your findings about this issue of your research question by comparing your findings with that of the most important study finding, let's say Article 1. First, making comparisons along the lines of what is similar, then along the lines of what is different. Then explain why there are any differences and what it means. Good? Now, this is the part I can teach you, but the point is, I gave you a template of 6 pointers, right? Now you have to think deeper and say, well, I predicted this, I found this, right? Did I find exactly the same thing that others found before me that I cited in the introduction? Or were there some differences? If there are some differences, how can you explain those differences? That can take a paragraph. And then you do the same for 2 other articles, studies. You see that? This paragraph 3, paragraph 4, and paragraph 5. So I want you to be able to go through this process of comparing what it means in terms of the findings of your study by comparing your findings with others' findings for 3 most important articles. Not all 8 or all 10, just 3. Remember, even in your presentation, we concentrated on 3 articles, right? The most important 3. Those are the ones you can go more than that. Then what you do is this one. Summarize like these 3, 1, 2, 3. You've compared your findings with those of 3 other articles, 3 other studies in 3 paragraphs, right? Then summarize all these in 1 paragraph. Okay. So summarize what you inferred in paragraphs 3, 4, and 5 in light of your main goal of the study. Then state any limitations specific to your study related to the research question. Specifically, present things that your study did not address that are relevant to your goal of the study. Then provide some tips about the future directions. You can do this in 1 or 2 paragraphs at limitations, future directions. Then the last paragraph is take home message. What does it all mean? Take home. Give the final take home message here at a very general level. Perhaps you could bring things that you discussed in the very first paragraph, your introduction, to connect. Okay. Are we clear on this? Now, let me tell you how this structure of this discussion is pretty much similar to the structure of your introduction. I'm sorry for the asymmetric picture here. It's supposed to be symmetric. Okay. So this is, what does this look like? Doesn't look like anything, I guess. But if it were to look like some meaningful thing, what would that be?
An hourglass, maybe?
An hourglass. Thank you so much. So the narrowest part of the hourglass, right? This is your method section. Okay. This part of the hourglass is everything before your method section, meaning your introduction, right? And this part is your discussion. Okay. Now, what does it mean? Well, remember in the very first 1 or 2 paragraphs, what did you do in the introduction? You introduce the topic at a very general level, right? Well, you can end your discussion by bringing back that. It's an hourglass flipped, this is like a mirror image of this. What is the next less broader or more narrower part? This part is your, most of it actually. This part is your literature review. Remember, you started with the most general topic, then you started talking about your literature review, like summarizing articles in a logical fashion, step 3, right? Then, what did the step 3 end? Step 3 ends with a study that's most related to study, and it ends with a gap that you found, right? That's what it is, most general to most specific. And this part that you end this you already did in RMS1 is overview of the current study. Remember? Narrowest part. What do you state here in the overview of the current study? The goal of the study, right? What else? What you manipulated, brief task, what participants did, then hypothesis and prediction, right? You now do that in the overview of the current study. Remember, this is exactly what we did, or I asked you to do in the very first paragraph of your discussion. Remember, what is the very first discussion? Restate the purpose, goal of the study, restate what the hypotheses were, what the predictions were, right? So if you look at it, your discussion part is a mirror image of your introduction, except that the discussion is not as big as the introduction because you're not comparing all the 10 articles, you're just comparing 3 articles. So if you're comparing 3 articles, right, in the literature review, there are 3 most important articles that are towards the end of your literature review. Those would be compared here, right? It becomes broader and broader, ends with what you've introduced. I will stop here.